Welcome everybody to another week here on the Patterson Report Sports Podcast. I'm Brandon, he's Ryan, and it's a big week. It's kind of to me where the playoffs really begin. Last week wasn't quite the showing that you wanted to see out of this Eagles team, um, but it just didn't feel like a game where we needed it. Most Eagle fans felt pretty good about getting through the wild card round. I thought team looked. I don't know if rusty is the word. I don't know if sluggish is the word. Just not what you're obviously hoping for. But the playoffs really start this week,
Yeah.
and I don't know about you. I was hoping for the Rams, just because Minnesota had been such a buzzsaw all year with a great record and a good division, and Sam Darnold playing out of his mind, and all these great things. And then I watched that game, and it kind of reminded me why the Rams' record is what it is, and it is not indicative of the talent on that team. Um, Remember, they played most of the season without their wide receiver duo, which means everything to that team. Puka Nacua is just starting rounding back into shape towards the end of the season. I know the Eagles played the Rams and won when they had both Cup and Nacua, but that was his first day back. This Rams team looks almost completely different from the Rams team that we saw earlier on this season. And while I still think the Eagles should be favored, it should be in an Eagles win. It's still, I think, a favorable road so far. Um, but the idea that people were throwing parades in the streets that the Rams beat the Vikings and everything's going to be okay again, I would check back in on who exactly Matt Stafford, Puka Nacua, and Cooper Kupp really are. Not to mention that Rams pass rush looks to be a bit of a problem. It's going to be a tough game. I think people are looking past this Rams team a bit too much for my liking.
I think they are too, but I want to wait and see what the weather is first. I've heard rain. I've heard a lot of snow, and if
It's
it's a
going to
snow
suck.
game, I'm liking my chances with the Eagles here because I know Matthew Stafford played all those years in the snow, but he hasn't been very good recently. I believe he's 1-5 in his last 6 in like cold weather snow games.
Yeah, Matt Stafford, think about it. I mean, divisionally, you're right, because you had to go play really just in Green Bay and Chicago.
Chicago, yeah.
Um,
Minnesota always
but
had the dome, except I think he was already in Los Angeles by the time they had to play on the Gophers field. That was wow, I remember that. I'm dating myself now, it feels like.
yeah, I don't think Stafford ever knew that. I think he went from dome to dome.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you've seen his numbers. His snow game numbers are atrocious.
They're
Um,
not the best. I mean, recently he's been okay in terms of yards. In his last two, I believe he's 1-1,
mm,
but like before that he struggled, and it's just you see Saquon, had 300 total yards and 2 touchdowns against them last time. Like it kind of makes you feel really good about the matchup. And you mentioned the pass rush. Jared Verse had his lowest PFF graded game against the Eagles offensive line. So
oh yeah, no. I'm not saying we're not outmatched by any means. If you're an Eagles fan, you still wanted the Rams. I think in this, um, but it could just be in my work circles and clients and people I've been talking to this last week. It could be like an echo chamber kind of thing. But what's bothered me a little bit is just we got the Rams, we're good. We should be. This team should beat the Rams, but this Rams team has the components to win a playoff game. Kyron Williams is a legit back. They have two great wide receivers. Not for nothing, we're down Nakobe Dean, which is a huge loss on the defense. You saw Oren Burks last week. I don't think he's the answer. Maybe Trot Jr., but we don't even
that'd be a
know.
moment.
Yeah.
That'd be a moment for sure.
So I think the Eagles win. I think it's a hard fought game. But I'm definitely not going to be kicking back watching the game relaxed.
No, you can never be relaxed. I got relaxed really early last week, and then you started to tense up as soon as the offense started to sputter. Like that first drive, you're like, okay, you see Green Bay come out, go 3-and-out again. You're like, okay, no stress. And then the stress kept mounting and mounting and mounting until they finally pulled away, but it took a lot from the defense. So
Yeah, that's the other thing. We'd be remiss if we didn't get into it at least a little bit. Um, I'm not a big ESP fan personally. To each their own. I don't think he's the worst guy covering the Eagles. I don't think he's the best either. But he puts out his matchup grades of where each team stacks up against the other. And I didn't agree with this one really at all.
Is the coaching one?
Coaching, I thought, was absurd.
I
I'm
did not
not a
agree
Nick
with coaching.
Sirianni hater. I'm really not. I think he's great at motivating. I think that could be. I think navigating the Eagles locker room is more difficult than it seems, and he does a great job at it. He is not Sean McVay.
Have you ordered your copy of Inner Excellence, by the way?
No,
Ask. Not
no.
yet. Did you see
But
the Philly News Monday morning?
I know that book is now like one of the
Number
top
one, it
selling
went from
books.
547,000 to 1.
Yeah,
Awesome,
which is
man.
so
That's
sick, dude. Our fan base rocks.
dude. The morning news in Philadelphia Monday morning, they opened up. They were just sitting there reading. They didn't say anything. They were just like, this pastor's, and they started highlighting stuff. They're like, oh, we got to do a newscast. It was great.
It is cool. But even that moment is kind of a microcosm of, Nick's not. He's not Sean McVay. He's not Kyle Shanahan. He's not a brilliant X's and O's guy. I do think he's a really good team builder and team leader. I think that's what he excels in. But to say he is in the same league as Sean McVay as a Nick Sirianni fan is ludicrous to me. Similarly, at the top of the list, he had both. He had, I believe, I could be mistaken, Jalen Hurts either slightly ahead of Matt Stafford or those two just about even. I'm a Jalen Hurts guy. I think he's been a good quarterback for the Eagles. I think he's a great leader. That's also insane. He's not Matt Stafford.
Matt Stafford is one of the most underrated quarterbacks of our generation. I'll just go out and say that right now. Like, he didn't have those wins, or he just had the crazy garbage time stats because the Lions were so bad, and it had nothing to do with him at all. And then he went to the Rams, won a Super Bowl. I think they should have lost that one. I'm a big Joe Burrow guy, so like that's bias right there. But Jamar Chase was open on that last play. The whole line just broke down.
Mm-hmm.
But bias aside, I think Matt Stafford does some crazy things, and it's not easy to stop him, especially when there's a guy like Puka Nacua, who's absolutely insane. Cooper Kupp, I feel like it's coming to an end for him, sadly. He just hasn't been producing lately.
He's taken a step back. I mean, it's definitely he's the number 2 now. But as far as wide receiver duos go, theirs can hold a candle to ours. I mean, I think Smitty's better than Kupp in this stage of his career, but they also have an elite wide receiver duo.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. Hopefully this guy's coming from. I don't know if you peeped the shirt. I had to cop one. I had to get one.
Quinn, I could be mistaken. I forget who Quinyon lined up against last time, because he had to be. This was before he was definitively CB1, because Slade didn't play in the first.
I believe he was just on the outside. Nacua lined up on the slot a lot. I remember just calling it out because it was a Sunday night game. So it
must have just been Quinyon on Kupp, and then I guess DeJean would have. Yeah, DeJean was playing.
I think one of those. I think Nacua got hurt in the first game, didn't he?
He played. He just didn't finish.
Yeah, that's what it was.
Yeah, he played. It was his first game back from injury, and he wasn't ready yet.
I noticed Nacua lining up a lot in the slot, and they might try to do that again. But Cooper DeJean's been so good, and that's before I believe that was week 7 or 9, something like that.
Yeah, he was pretty squarely. He took over in week 5.
I forget what week that is. I want to check.
I think we came out of the bye with DeJean.
It was 12. I'm very wrong, but
yeah,
it was later in the season than I thought it was, because I know Nacua missed some time there at the beginning of the season.
Yeah. Like you said, it is a good matchup for the Eagles. The things that the Rams do well match up really well with the things our defense does well. If you're going to live and die through the air, good luck with Slay, Quinyon, DeJean. So, the back end is completely loaded. I think Dean is a very good coverage linebacker. So that kind of sucks. I don't mean coverage as in, he's not going to be a pick guy. He'll hit the ball someone in the end zone, but his tackle numbers speak for themselves. If you catch the ball in his vicinity, you're on the ground just about immediately. And Oren Burks missed a shit ton of tackles last week. So that's going to hurt a little bit. But it's not enough to sway the matchup, I don't think.
Yeah, it always hurts. And, I know we're talking about linebacker, but like, I want to move down a level to the defensive line group. I want to give Nolan Smith his flowers, man, because wow, dude, Zach Tom is a very good right tackle. He's not in the level of Sewell or Lane Johnson. He's very good though. And Nolan Smith just had himself a day. It was incredible to see what he did against a spectacular right tackle. He's really coming into his own.
Yeah, I believe, I'll count the playoff. I think he finished the season, like the regular season, with like 6.5 sacks. And he hadn't registered a sack until after the bye week. So, he went on a tear the back end of the season, which, God, did we need it. Pretty much when BG went down, you saw a completely different level to Nolan Smith's game. Thank God, because like I said, we definitely needed it. Bryce Huff has continued to just be a non-factor defensively. But at this point, look, I trust Vic Fangio with my life. So if he says that the guys we have out there are better than Bryce Huff, I believe you. I find it hard to believe, but I believe you. But yeah, Nolan Smith has been sensational, and he's really been our edge rush presence. Sweat has had his moments here or there, but it feels like, whenever you see somebody get into the quarterback, more often than not, it's Nolan Smith.
Yeah, I agree 100%. It's just, he's one of those guys that, it took a little while for him to develop. Like the first year, everyone's like, oh, he's a bust. Oh, he's not going to do anything. You got to let some of these guys develop a little bit. Jalen Carter was incredible as soon as he came right in, and it kind of altered the expectations for Nolan, which it shouldn't have. But
what didn't help was they were all Georgia too. Like the parallels were too easy to draw.
Yeah, I'm glad he came in last year and not this year, because then it would have been like, oh, Jalen Carter, Cooper DeJean, Quinyon Mitchell's producing right away. Where's Nolan Smith at? Like, that would have been totally unfair. But it's one of those things where sometimes if a guy goes down, someone has to step up, and he has done that and some. So I'm excited for his future, because if he keeps developing with his physical profile, it's going to be a force on the edge.
It could also very easily be coaching. Think of all these guys suddenly took a leap this year. I don't find that to be a coincidence. DeJean is a rookie having a sensational year. Quinyon, rookie, great year. I think Jordan Davis has been better this year.
Yes.
He's never going to have gaudy staff. That's not his role, but he's collapsed the inside of the pocket very often.
His rushing yards against when on the field and when off the field, there's a difference. I think it's like 2+ yards.
Yeah, so he's been better. Although he's always been good. He got. At
least it was last weekend. That's what it was. It was against Josh Jacobs. It was 5 or 6 off and then 3 on.
Yeah. So he's a huge difference maker. Nakobe Dean turned into one of the better linebackers in the NFL. Nolan Smith turned into a legit edge. Once these guys finally got a half decent coach, say what you will about. Who the hell? Last year was a clusterfuck anyway. The year before, Gannon, whatever he was, now that these guys really got a great defensive coach, they're all turning into studs. That can't be a coincidence.
No, it's one of those things where last year ended so badly. We have such that, I feel like a bad taste in our mouth about how last season ended, and the defense just fell apart. We brought in Matt Patricia there for a little while. It
made
just
it worse.
It wasn't pretty at all. And then Vic came in. Remind you, Miami Dolphins players laughed when he left town. They laughed. I don't know why now, but so be it.
Well, whatever culture the Miami Dolphins have, I want the opposite. That team is one of the worst cultured teams in the NFL.
It kind of feels like the culture wasn't there with, what Vic has brought to the Eagles team. Zach Bond, he turned into an all-pro linebacker in his first year, inside linebacker. He's done some incredible things, and I hope he's here to stay. I know our other offensive coordinator might be on the move. I don't know how you feel about him having 3 head coaching interviews.
It's such bullshit.
Between today and the game.
And it's the same issue I have with college football and NIL. Look, am I a little bit frustrated with Kellen Moore? Sure. I mean, in this movie, in this like sports movie kind of feel, you want the guy that's like ride or die for your team. Like, I'll deal with this after the season. Like, that's what you want in a perfect world. In reality, you're never going to get that. Like, I don't think Kellen Moore is any less bought in than the next guy just because he's taken 3 interviews. I think it's beyond dumb that you're able to request coaching interviews in the middle of a playoff race. And look, we've been burned by this once, and maybe that's why Philadelphia's a little cagey about it. But the last thing I want is my offensive coordinator, who's supposed to be game planning, flying or zooming or whatever the hell he's doing all over God's creation to take interviews.
It's zooming. I don't think they're traveling. It'd be a mess if they said, "Hey, you could travel for interviews." Like,
I hope.
I think it's all Zoom. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
At least the Lions were, because they can interview on the bye week. But I don't know, man.
Lions.
It's just what?
I don't think he interviewed with the Lions.
No, the Lions coaches interviewed last week for openings. Aaron Glenn and Ben Johnson interviewed for like every opening.
Yeah,
it was all virtual. That's why I was saying the Lions.
Okay.
But I Kellen Moore's had his ups and his downs. There's some things that were pointed out by national media this week, which I'm glad got the attention with some of the route concepts. I know Dan
the route tree last week was abysmal.
It really was. So like, I want him to be focusing on that and not, sure, if you want to get a head coaching job, go right ahead. But like, it's tough.
If the plus side, now look, all these teams are going to interview all these guys. I think if he does leave us, it's going to be for Dallas because of the kind of coach Jerry wants. And he wants somebody who's so grateful to have the position, he'll do it Jerry's way for 4 to 5 seasons until he gets frustrated doing that and then leaves and the cycle repeats itself. But like you said, Kellen Moore's been good, not great. Like, he's been a good offensive coordinator. He's been a step up from last year, I think, overall. But he hasn't set the world apart. It's not Ben Johnson or Bobby Slowick or anybody. I would like to see him stay. I would like to see other teams pass up on him and keep him around just because I can't fathom the idea of Jalen Hurts having to learn another system again. Like, I don't know how other teams do it. It's commendable, but nobody cycles coordinators quite like the Eagles. It's absurd.
Yeah, it really is absurd. And, as much as slack as Kellen's got, it's just stability is nice. It's a luxury in the NFL. It feels like with the turnover that you see happening. I mean, the Lions are lucky to run it back. They could have lost both their coordinators last year, the year they had last year, and they didn't because they were searching for the perfect opening. But
like, you're right. That situation, Houston was the same way. KC never loses anybody. Like, it's crazy the stability that these other teams I would say on our level, are able to have. And we are a coaching carousel, which I guess is good because you have great coordinators, but there's got to be a balance where you can keep great people in the building.
Yeah, and, the Eagles have been able to partially do that. I mean, Stoutland's been in the building for gosh know how long at this point. I couldn't give you an exact number, but it's been forever. And, of course, he deserves it. Build the statue. But there comes a point where
he came in with Chip Kelly. That's what he got.
Yeah. I mean, I think Vic's going to stay here till he retires. Who knows when that will be? He's, up there in age. So whenever he decides to pack it in, obviously
he'll finish here, though. I agree.
Oh, yeah, he'll finish here. I don't see him leaving for a head coaching spot. He tried that. It didn't work, in Denver. I mean, it wasn't the best situation either, but
he's a local guy, too. He's already
local guy, he's coaching for the team. Yeah, it's a perfect scenario for the Eagles franchise that they're going to keep him for as long as he coaches. But offensive coordinator, I mean, it would be nice to have some stability. I mean, I was floating the idea of bringing Shane Steichen back in, but then he somehow kept his job. I was surprised by that.
Hey, you know who didn't? Super Bowls.
Let's not go there. We could, but I mean, it's a possibility for sure.
Are you familiar with the Press Taylor theory?
I think I am.
Where Doug was turning Jacksonville around, had them in they won some playoff games under Doug, right?
They had that huge comeback.
Yes.
Against the Chargers.
So he was beloved in Jacksonville, getting the most out of Trevor Lawrence. They spent all this money. This was the best. He brought in Press Taylor this year to be the QB's coach. Fell apart. You remember who was, I believe, the QB's coach when Doug was fired in Philadelphia?
That was Press Taylor.
It was also Press Taylor. I think Doug Peterson might be a hell of a coach. He just has a Press Taylor problem.
I mean, when you look, I know Sleeper tweeted this out today. Brian Thomas Jr. splits with Trevor Lawrence and Mac Jones. It feels like there's a little bit of a quarterback problem or quarterback coach's problem there.
Yeah.
So I mean, hey, maybe we'll take him and not Press Taylor, but I feel like Press Taylor's gonna squeeze his way into the door.
You got to put it contractually. Like you got to put like a restraining order on Press Taylor.
It's one time's a coincidence, two times you start to
the second time was so immediate. It was their first year together. The bottom fell. Like
completely fell out.
Yeah, so I wouldn't be. The thing about bringing Doug back and why they would never do it, and we'll get back to reality here in a second. For the same reason that Nick Foles and Carson Wentz was never going to work long term. The same reason Jalen Hurts and Carson Wentz is doomed from the start, especially with the way the city treats, Nick Sirianni. If Doug was on the sideline, Nick would have no authority because a man who is a god in the eyes of most fans is standing right next to him.
Yeah, there's better guys to take that position. Like I said, I thought it was going to be Shane Steichen. I really did. It'd be a perfect, little match. I mean, Jalen Hurts had his best season under Shane Steichen. I don't know what's going on in Indianapolis. I've looked into it. Still don't know what's going on.
They have to have pictures on ownership or something.
It's very confusing how their tenures have lasted this long without any sort of success. So, I mean, we'll do this if Kellen Moore gets hired, and I believe Kellen Moore will get hired for a head coaching job. There's too many interviews, and
I think it'll be in Dallas.
I think it will be as well, but it stinks that it has to be, hey, right now, it's I want the game plan to be strong because, like, if we win this game, odds are, unless the Commanders with their last second magic for what feels like the 11th time this season, they showed the montage last week. I'm like, this is like 2 minutes long. Like, what are we doing? And it was all last plays of the game. I'm like, oh boy. So
we're on there.
Yeah, we're on there. Yeah, that touchdown pass wasn't pretty, but it didn't matter in the end anyway because Detroit had the tiebreakers over us regardless. So it was whatever. It happened. It allowed Jalen to get some extra rest considering the injury stuff for that game. Yeah. And obviously, he was rusty, but he didn't have the stats against the Rams either. He threw for 174 yards, and Saquon did all the work. And that was in a nice, well-conditioned stadium that's basically a dome, but, kind of not a dome.
Yeah.
It's weird.
But
holes in it, but
yeah, it's weird.
Yeah, I don't know. New stadium, I guess. New era stadium, but now there's going to be probable snow on the ground. And this rushing attack is going to be asked to do a ton. I hope AJ Brown's book does not get soggy, though. That's what I hope. He needs his inner excellence.
I think, and I mean, look, we talked a little bit about the route tree against the Packers. I mean, Smitty got a little bit involved. Dallas Goedert had that screen that turned into one of the more awesome touchdowns of the year.
Like, the throw was bad.
It was. He made that play on his own. He had to stop his momentum, turn it. Like, you're right.
Beast.
But we go away. Like, there's two routes that are pretty much a cheat code for the Eagles. And I would say every 3 weeks they remember they can use them. And AJ slant, 10 to 14 yards minimum. And then, once Saquon gets cooking, AJ go route. And just run that all game. You don't need to get creative.
See, okay, now you bring this up, it jogged my memory a little bit. I am stunned they went to the well with the Philly tush push trick play against the Packers. We didn't
Yeah,
bring
why
that up.
pull that then? It should have been a touchdown for sure. That was, I mean, that's a throw Jalen has to make 10 out of 10 times. I'm sorry. But yeah, I agree. They should have kept that. We didn't need it then.
Yeah, we should have kept that one in the bag for probably Detroit.
Yeah, now they've seen it. I mean, I don't know how. That's one
You
of
could
those
run
things
variations of that. They have something else up their sleeve. I'm confident.
And it's kind of that catch-22 a little bit where, like, look, it's kind of already done its job. And follow me on this. It's a little tinfoil hat-y, but it makes sense. Like, now that you've introduced that possibility, teams have two options. You sell out completely against the tush push, which you would do anyway, and run the risk of getting beat over the top. Or if you pull one person out of the box to keep an eye on A.J. Brown, you're now outmaneuvered on the tush push, and we're going to get the first down. So even though we didn't connect on it, which was painful, if teams want to consider that we could do that, it makes a tush push more effective.
Yeah, I mean, have they run the Saquon sweep out of the tush push yet? I don't think they have. I remember we did it with DeAndre Swift.
We've run a couple of screens, like a rollout screens to the left, but that's about it.
Like a sweep, like hand it off to Saquon and have him go across the line. I feel like that's in their bag somewhere. I feel like they have to have a deeper bag than there's that, because I mean, if they would have hit that there, the game would have been over. Mm-hmm. Like there would have been no sweat, it feels like, at that point. So like I get why they pulled it out, but I'd rather wait. I mean, Ben Johnson has a deep bag of tricks that he's going to go all out for in each game. Like it feels like he has an endless bag, and it works because of the personnel that he has, because those guys are just that good.
And because his head coach is certifiably insane in a great way.
I think he's a CEO comparable, like a CEO kind of head coach comparable to Nick Sirianni.
I agree.
I feel like they lead in similar ways.
I think leadership-wise, I agree. I think they're both great at getting guys to buy in and play hard and team culture. I think they're two of the best at that. I think I trust if this game comes down to 2 minutes in the fourth quarter, I think I trust Dan Campbell's game management just a little bit more than I do Nick's. Because live or die, Dan he's consistent. You know exactly what you're going to get. Nick still kind of waffles, where sometimes he'll be conservative when you don't expect him to. Other times he'll be foolishly aggressive. It still feels like he's kind of finding his identity down the stretch of games.
I think it works so well because of who he has calling his offense. He's Ben Johnson. He is Jameson Williams. He's Amon-Ra St. Brown. Like, we're probably going to talk about this in detail next week unless something really goes wrong in either of the games.
Yeah.
Because I believe it's 8.5 right now in the Lions and the 6.5 for the Eagles. So like, this was always destiny. We talked about this like week 5 or 6 or 7 or something like that. Yeah. We talked about this a while ago. It was bound to happen. The script hasn't changed a bit unless it changes this weekend a little bit, which, like I said, we'll talk about that if something crazy happens out there. If the Commanders pull off the win or the Eagles get upset, we'll talk about it, of course, but it's going to be crazy. It's going to be a crazy 2, hopefully more weeks.
It is.
More than that.
But as we wrap this one up, I want to get your official on the books prediction for Eagles Rams.
Oh boy. I mean, we kind of were right last week with the game eventually opening up, because it eventually did, but at the same time it didn't. So I really want to say 21-14. I really think that's going to be it, but I think it's going to be higher scoring than that. But I'm going to say 21-14. I think the snow's going to slow them down a little bit, if there is.
All right. I'm going to go a full touchdown above. I'm going to go 24-17.
I like that. I got to check the over under, because I might have to severely bet the under if that's anything close to my prediction.
If it's a snow game, I think you got to hammer the under. And it's looking like a snow game. We got snow here.
Currently set at 44.5. So it's under by a fair amount. So,
imagine if you had the shady snow game. Granted that was against Detroit, which would have been super cool if we had a snow game against Detroit again. But I mean, Saquon's already well on his way to break almost every shady rushing record as an Eagle if he plays out his contract. the way he's playing. It would be really cool if we could, if you have like he has this snow game moment like Shady did.
I think he's gonna. The Saquon signature moment has happened all season. I mean, the hurdle is going to be remembered forever at this point. It feels like because I see it every commercial break, and I know they're gonna keep cycling that one. But I think this is the signature moment, and then hopefully the Detroit game is Jalen's signature moment because they're gonna have to throw the ball in that game if we get if everything plays out how it's supposed to. I think it has to be Jalen's signature moment to win that game.
I hope you're right, but I don't care how we do it, just so we win. Like Jalen said at this press conference, he was like, "It's playoff football. I'm not worried about style points," and I do appreciate that about him. But him breaking out and looking like 2022 Jalen will make me feel a lot better than I do sitting here right this second recording this podcast with you.
It's very similar to the Atlanta game. It feels like it got that feel to it,
where you sneak by the first one and then blow it up in Minnesota. Hopefully it has that same effect. Neither one of us thinks so with our score predictions, but I think we'd both be happily wrong.
I'd love to be wrong.
We'll see if we are, but until then, I'm Brandon. That's Ryan. Just a passing report. Go Birds.
Go Birds.